This started resonating with me last night. I don't know why it kind of took me a while before it sort of landed with me, but I kept seeing the same thing on Twitter. I've heard a lot of callers to our show, Dibs, say this, and I thought to myself, okay, instead of Brock, Trey, Brock, quarterback, let's just focus on one of them for a second. And let's find out where everybody's opinion lies. And so we're going to back up a little bit. Let's talk about Brock Purdy for a moment.
Okay.
What I keep hearing people say is, well, this guy is just a younger, maybe a touch quicker version of Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, his name is back. Jimmy G.
Can't shake it.
Get ready. Today there's going to be some Jimmy. Is that what you all think? Let's Jimmy 2.0. Is that what this is? And is that why maybe some people have a lack of confidence in what they saw from Purdy? Only 8 games. I grant that. I don't know how anybody could be just like sold, like, okay, let's just sign him for the rest of his life. I don't know how you could be, but is that why people are so hesitant? Because when Jimmy showed up and showed out and went on his little undefeated run,
right,
and then got $27 million a year, and then it didn't necessarily go the way people wanted it to go, even though he came darn close, but he was never a great statistical quarterback, and the 49ers did not raise a trophy. Okay, so is that what everyone thinks? 888-957-9570. Do you believe that Brock Purdy is just simply Jimmy G 2.0?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Talk to me.
He is a system quarterback. He's physically limited, and he wins because he's in the Shanahan system. And when you talk about a quarterback who can take over a game or a quarterback who is elite, that's not this guy. And if you look at Jimmy G's stats over 5 games, they were pedestrian. 96.2 quarterback rating. He won every game, 7 TDs, 5 picks. Brock Purdy's numbers were better. A quarterback rating that was higher, a TD interception comparison that was higher, yardage that was a little bit higher, not a lot higher based on his starts, but he had a lot more talent around him. So I think that the detractors would say Brock Purdy is a guy who's benefited from having a lot of talent around him and a guy who doesn't make a lot of mistakes, and that's what Jimmy Garoppolo was at his best.
Okay.
A system quarterback.
So what if I countered with this? What if I countered with, we loved Jimmy because he showed up when the bar was so incredibly low. They were terrible. They were 1-10. And Jimmy walked in, and they started winning football games. And we went, we love this guy.
Yeah.
What was it, 6 TDs and 5 picks?
7.
That run?
7 and 5.
Was it 7?
Yep.
I thought it was 6.
Nope,
Whatever
7
it is.
and 5.
Okay, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks.
Well, the one came when he came in mop-up duty before he started. That was one of his touchdowns.
All right. So, but let's give it to him. He threw it. 7 touchdowns.
It counts.
5 interceptions. Just kind of like whatever numbers. But the bar was way down here by our ankles. And so when he raised it up to our waists, we went, let's make him the highest paid player in the game. We found our guy. And John Lynch said it as much. We found our guy, and that's a great feeling. And then the Jimmy era happens. We don't need to go over everyone's opinion on that, whether it was successful or not. Sorry, Giannis. Was Jimmy G's era with the Niners a failure? Is that how you look at it?
We don't do failure.
Okay. So everybody has that's been talked out. But it goes the way it goes, and when Brock Purdy comes in, the bar for the organization is at a completely different point. Instead of being at our waist, now it's up at our chests, and Brock walks in and takes it from our chests to our shoulders. I'm not going to say top of the head, but he raised it from the chest to the shoulders. Jimmy raises it from the ankles to the waist. What if I countered with that? Doesn't that give an acknowledgement that what Brock Purdy did was heavier lifting than what Jimmy did?
I guess, but you could also look at it and say that what Brock Purdy did was on the backs of a system that's already in place and surrounded by Pro Bowlers, if not Hall of Famers. And so what Brock Purdy did was easier than what Jimmy Garoppolo did. But what we forget about what Jimmy Garoppolo did was the fact that and I'm looking at the game log right now, Jimmy Garoppolo in his wins, he beat Chicago 15-14. Chicago was god-awful. You beat Houston 26-16. Houston was terrible. You beat Tennessee, a good team. You beat Jacksonville, a really good team.
They were a good team that year.
And then you beat a Ram team that had already given up. Sean Mannion, shout out Foothill High in Pleasanton. I know the Mannion family very well. I will not disparage the Mannions.
Whoop.
Yeah, I know all the Mannions. All of it. I know his father. I know his uncles. I know his grandfather. I'm not going to get bogged down in my Mannion knowledge, but the Ram team they beat was not a real Ram team. So Jimmy had 2 good wins, 2 wins over terrible teams, and a Week 17 win against a team that had given up. So a lot of times we glorify what Jimmy G did in a wrong way. What Brock Purdy did was real. It was a playoff team in a playoff drive with a very, very good team around him, but Brock had good numbers. Brock played amazing. So I don't think that the comparison is fair in terms of he's now Jimmy 2.0 because he went undefeated, but I do think that we also have to look at what Brock had around him in terms of the weaponry as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair. But yeah, Brock won playoff games. He won 2 of them. He won playoff games. He beat real teams.
Right.
And then I'll add this as well because I think this is part of the conversation. As you said with Jimmy was so hard for people because what was the number on the stat sheet that was actually good? There was only one, and it was this win-loss record.
Yeah.
Other than that, not terrible numbers, but they weren't great numbers either. He was never, like this guy would go maybe take you to a Super Bowl or an NFC title game, but boy, you didn't want him on your fantasy team. You did not want Jimmy Garoppolo. Like round 13, you're like, all right, I'll take Jimmy as my backup. Like that's what we all did. Brock Purdy's numbers are numbers. These are real numbers. Now, what I have in front of me is just regular season, okay? These are regular season numbers. 5-0, a completion percentage of north of 67, over 1,300 yards passing, 13 touchdowns to go against 4 interceptions, a quarterback rating north of 107. Now, that was only 5 games. But if you run that out over 17, and I'm not saying we can do that yet.
No, we can't.
But
we can't.
That, by the way, this also leaves out the 5-0 leaves out the Dolphins game. It doesn't leave out his stats.
Right.
But it leaves out
and we're leaving out Jimmy G's first game where he went 2 for 2 with a touchdown.
Okay.
Quarterback rating of 143.7.
Very impressive. I loved that throw. And the other one, too. They were great throws.
18 yards. And a tug.
If you run out what Brock did last year over a full season, you're talking about an elite level Pro Bowl statistical quarterback. Right? You don't argue that, do you?
I mean, 4,000 yards, 39 touchdowns, 12 picks.
Well, is it 4,000?
It's a little bit more than 4,000.
Yeah,
you don't have to do the math. 1,374 over, because you're giving him the Miami game, which is game 6. So if you times it by 3, which would be 18 games, he's at about 4,000 yards. He's at about 38 touchdowns. He's at about 11 interceptions and a QB rating of about 105. That's pretty damn good.
Pro Bowl quarterback.
Yeah, pretty much.
You're not going to find, sure, is that Mahomes? Okay, maybe it's a little south of Mahomes. That's really good stuff. Jimmy never did that. Not for any 6 or 7 game stretch. He never did that. He just didn't.
Well, if you look at his best year, his only year that he played all 16, 3,978 yards,
right?
27 touchdowns, not 38.
A lot less.
13 interceptions, and a QB rating of 102.
Okay.
So that's damn near what Brock would be, except not quite the same amount of touchdowns.
You know me. Jimmy was a good quarterback.
You love Jimmy G.
He's a good quarterback.
No, you love Jimmy G.
We have our relationship.
You do.
It is what it is.
It's close.
I'm not going to label it, okay? I don't do that. I know what it is, and so does he, and we leave it at that. But the point is like, It's too small of a sample to get overly excited. However, it's a sample that we frankly never had. We didn't. Like, Jimmy never did this. So I just think there are a lot of different little wrinkles in the conversation because I hear you. Jimmy didn't get to play outside of last year. Jimmy didn't get to play with Christian McCaffrey in the backfield.
You know who he did get to play with?
Who did he get to play with?
In his first game, Carlos Hyde, 17 carries for 54.
Yep.
Matt Breida, 12 for 45. You want catches? Yeah, Kyle Juszczyk was on that team. That's the only guy who was on both. Marquise Goodwin, Trent Taylor, Garrett Selleck, and a little dollop of George Kittle who had 2 catches.
I mean,
that's not McCaffrey, Debo, and Ayuk.
But that's at the beginning.
My God, bro!
And those running backs, I'm not gonna discuss.
Hyde and Breida or
okay.
McCaffrey and fill in the blank.
Understood.
Woo!
McCaffrey is the first elite running back that the 49ers have probably, and I mean elite. It's the first time in the Kyle Shanahan era with the 49ers.
Goodwin and Taylor or Debo and Ayuk?
Yeah. Well,
my God.
However, Jimmy played with Debo. Jimmy played
Not this year.
He played with Ayuk.
But we're talking about the 2017 year.
Right.
That's the comp.
Right. Well, but does it have to be? When people say it's Jimmy 2.0, I don't think they mean necessarily Jimmy's first year versus Brock's first year. I just think they mean that Brock Purdy is like Jimmy.
Right. Therefore,
he's limited, and maybe he is. I know.
Well, hopefully he's not injury prone like Jimmy.
Here's the thing. I'm going to admit what I guess is a weakness in this conversation for me, because you know how I feel about the draft. Oh, the NFL draft. I just don't put any stock into it at all. Now, is a first rounder more likely to be good than a seventh rounder? Sure, I'm not a dummy. But I don't care what the Niners draft grade was last month. I don't care. It doesn't matter. So when people go, look, there's a reason that Brock was picked in the 7th round. Right, there is. It doesn't mean it was a good one. There's a reason, but I don't know if it was a good one. There's a reason that Tom Brady was picked in the 6th, but it wasn't a good one. It turned out to not be a good. There's a reason that George Kittle was picked in the 5th. It was a bad set of reasons. So,
well, it depends, because if he could have gone to the Titans and maybe not been a very good player at all.
Maybe.
It's all circumstantial in the NFL.
Well, not all. Some.
Mostly.
Some. And
it's mostly circumstantial.
I think maybe for quarterback more than other positions.
Agreed,
also,
yeah.
Right? But I just, this idea that because of the limitations that led to him being a 7th round pick, now need to stick with him for the rest of his life. He can't outweigh his draft. He can't get better. All of those things that people say, that I don't agree with.